A.S. Bushido. Young couples trigger trauma, as does school uniforms, especially combined. Hello, this is A.S. Bushido. This time I thought I'd talk about the concept of social and emotional triggers in relation to my PTSD this time. Strangely enough, I find this is actually the most debilitating of all my difficulties concerning my conditions. Why? It's because it's closely connected to the reason I've felt so lonely for all these years. Before I begin, I just want to ask, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing if you're on YouTube or following if you're on TikTok, and liking the video, as it helps with the algorithms, as I've heard from other channels online. If you'd like to, please drop in a comment. I'd be interested to hear what you think about the topics I discuss in my videos, or even my photos. Likes and comments encourage me too, especially considering one of my traits includes a need for reassurance. It actually helps me feel I'm actually reaching out to people. In fact, if you know of anyone who can relate to my videos or you think might be interested in them, please share my channel, because I'd love to be able to connect to like-minded people. Now onto the subject of the video. Personally, when it comes to social emotional PTSD, I first started to become affected by it at the age of 10, believe it or not. I'm not going into too much depth here, as I'm saving it for my upcoming book. What I can say is that it's emotionally driven and connected to school. It actually has multiple chain reactions too. At various times, it happened 2 or 3 times at school, but the emotional side in particular happened twice, and later on across the internet. It's going to have to remain vague for now, since this is connected to my book after all. The strange thing about PTSD is that I felt, as soon as I was affected by it, it was as if I'd just aged about 100 years. Certainly my cynicism skyrocketed. In fact, it was so extreme, I felt like I became a completely different person. At the end of the day, the ultimate truth is, my anxiety, which was already heightened as it was, skyrocketed too. You try socializing when your anxiety is so extreme that you can barely string a sentence together in front of a complete stranger. Surprisingly enough, or maybe not, it's even more severe when it comes to women I'm attracted to. Even when it came to someone I wrote to for months. She's gone now, though, another notch to the trauma of my life. Yet what I'm referring to is the fact that when it came to talking to someone, especially a woman, I'd freeze up. I could barely say the words yes or no in a shaky voice. Just because I can write all these words down in my blog to read on my videos doesn't mean I can suddenly start spontaneously opening up to someone at random. It doesn't work like that. It's got to the point I dare not approach a woman because I know it's impossible to focus, to calm my mind and think straight without it coming up with so many over-analytical, critical, cynical possibilities. It doesn't help that more often than not I see women too busy staring at their smartphones to look at my face. Then let's factor in the fact that I said in my previous videos about masking and how rare I find it to see a woman crying, i.e. showing her true emotions, for me to build the courage to try to help her out somehow and hopefully socialize with her. So realizing how difficult this all is, I'm sure you can understand, or at least begin to, the reasons I'm referring to my PTSD triggers. When you think about it, triggers can all too easily lead to self-isolation, intentional in order to avoid overwhelming inner turmoil. Combine that with Asperger's autism, especially in respect to meltdowns, and you're in a world of overwhelming internal self-destructive harm. Sometimes you just have to retreat for your own well-being, yet you can't always rely on that because the bitter feeling of loneliness always takes priority. Answers? Ha! That's a joke. What are they? Notice the cynicism? It's never changed. If anything, it's worsened. Why? The distance between the time when the first instance of my trauma first began and the time that's passed, without finding a romantic answer to my long-lost hope. What would you think if I told you I feel as if I have 2 separate sides working in parallel opposite to each other within my own psyche? Not literally, I'm not schizophrenic. No, what I'm referring to is actually quite simple, even poetic, really, when you think about it. My mind and my heart are 2 very different concepts. There are times when they combine, but there are other times when they clash. A particularly poignant time when these two entities played a major part in my life was actually at school, believe it or not. I won't go into the specifics as it's too closely related to my book, but let's just say that as a result of my first trauma, it was because my heart was so hurt when it stuck itself out there that by the second time, my mind took over from my heart. The ultimate tragedy is I should have used my mind the first time and my heart the second time, although by the time I worked that out, it was too late. This is why my emotional social PTSD is so severe, and why I find it the most debilitating, because it's resulted in a fear of that which I need the most: love. Not a fear of love itself, but of the practically insurmountable challenges I'd face if I even contemplated attempting it. Yet, the truth is, I wish I could find my answer through alternative methods, not the traditional way. The same ultimate result, but an unorthodox approach. I've been hoping my book could help me to achieve that. In the end, I suppose it would come as to no surprise to you to learn that one of my PTSD triggers involves seeing young couples out and about, kissing and cuddling, holding hands, especially wearing school uniforms. This could also easily be misunderstood as mere jealousy, but as I've vaguely alluded to previously, it's actually rooted in a deep-seated memory of emotional torment. Added to that, there's something you'd have to understand to realize why this has such an impact on me. I tend to find that I'm highly sensitive to the emotional world. At times I wonder if I'm even able to cope at all in the world of romance. I've read about the concept of being what's called a highly sensitive person, and I started to realize there's something else fundamental here. I also have sensory processing disorder, or SPD for short. In my case, that involves sensory hypersensitivity, as I'm more highly sensitive to the five senses. Mind you, I'm a bit hyposensitive when it comes to taste, but that's a separate subject for another time. For now, I'm focusing on the concept of sensitivity. Now, it may be a theory, but I'm concluding that I don't believe I'm merely sensitive to the five senses. I'm sensitive to the world of romance too, or the social world in general. It would certainly explain a lot if it were true. Wouldn't help me much, but at least it would prove as to the reasons why I've suffered all these years. Would you believe that I actually found some evidence in a place you might consider unlikely, but is really quite interesting? You see, one of my interests happens to be Chinese zodiac signs, or astrology in general. Mind you, I am more focused on the Chinese side of it, as I personally find it much more interesting. Although having said that, if I combine my Chinese zodiac sign of the metal goat with that of my Western astrology sign of Cancer, then listen to what I'm about to say from the little bit of research I've just done. This is quite revealing, and explains a lot in my opinion. For a start off, goats are generally more interested in astrology, which is true, since it's one of my interests. The main focus for this particular video relates both to the PTSD trauma itself, its cause, as well as the difficulties I'm having in the world of romance in general. Just listen to this. There, as in the metal goat, tendency to internalize worries and resist change can lead to misunderstandings or missed opportunities. Yeah, you're telling me. The times I've been misunderstood are far too numerous. Besides, it tends to be a common theme for Asperger's autistics in general. As for missed opportunities, this was because of anxiety and, yes, worries too. I have tried to express them to the best of my ability, but it doesn't seem to make much difference. Maybe it's because they don't want to get to know an Asperger's autistic man like me. Who knows? But what I do find also interesting is this next passage. The combination of metal goat and Cancer creates a highly sensitive and compassionate individual who craves stability and peace of mind above all else. Any sign of stability and a peace of mind? No way. Peace of mind for someone like me means reassurance. When is a woman out there going to give me reassurance? You may well ask. It hasn't happened to me yet. Regarding compassion, that's something you'd only be able to recognize if you'd actually met me, but the most prominent out of everything in that sentence for me is the statement, the combination of metal goat and Cancer creates a highly sensitive. There you go. I'm highly sensitive. And I am, very much so. So much so, I honestly feel like the social world is more like a minefield to me. One false move and bam, a severe punch in the chest. It's unavoidable. I have used adjectives in the past. I've used this adjective in the past, and it's still true to this day. Rejection feels more like being run over by a stampede of elephants. And what's more, the loss of someone precious to me, like a close friend, especially if it's a woman I've been trying to socialize with for years, causes me to collapse to the floor and scream into the carpet. The only metaphorical way to describe this is to say, I feel as if I just lost an important part of myself in the process. Believe me, I've changed during each loss, each in very unique ways. Ultimately, I'm reaching out there with these words as much as my book to find like-minded people and maybe, hopefully in the end, my true answer, wherever she may be. Anyway, I'll leave it at that for now. Again, the photo in this video is one of my own. Also, just a reminder, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing if you're on YouTube or following if you're on TikTok. Perhaps leaving a comment, even if it's about the photo itself, and liking the video, as it helps with the algorithms